Hello, everyone. Hello, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight at the PLP New Student Information Meeting 2022. My name is Emily Maxwell. I'm one of the PLP teachers. Before we formally begin, I would like to just do a quick acknowledgement. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Before we begin, I would like to formally acknowledge the territory that this meeting is taking place on. I would like to thank the Coast Salish people, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish Nation that the North Vancouver School District resides on. We do truly appreciate and recognize and value our opportunity to work and live and grow on this traditional territory. So wherever you are joining us from this evening, whether you're on the North Shore, thank you very much for being here, and we will get started. Joining us this evening, you have three PLP teachers here. As I said, my name is Emily Maxwell. You'll also see Brian Hughes joining us from space there, and Petra Willems. Hello, Petra. And we'll get started.
Okay. Hello, everybody. All right. We are so excited to have all of you join us tonight. And for those of you that have seen my desk, I have two screens normally on my desk. And today I have my iPad set up here as well. And it's a little bit overwhelming, even for me. So I'm trying to navigate everything here. But we're so glad that you could join us tonight. And hopefully we make tonight worth your time. The most important part and the most exciting guests are not the teachers. We have some students, current PLP students, and some parents who have graciously offered to join us tonight to field your questions as well. So I'm most excited to hear from them, but you will have to hear from us a bit first. So yes, Jacob's got his camera on there. Okay, so on your screen right now, we're just some etiquette for our meeting tonight. We would love for this to be as participatory and as interactive as possible. So we really would encourage you to ask questions to make sure that what you need to know, you're able to get answered. So there's a couple different ways to do that. The first is there is a chat function in Microsoft Teams. So if you haven't already found that, depending on what kind of device you're on, there should be a chat box. Both Emily, Petra, and myself, when we aren't speaking, will be keeping an eye on that, and we will either be addressing those questions as they come up in the meeting, or we will be collating them and gathering them for an appropriate time to answer them later in the meeting, or even better, if they're best answered by our students or our parents, we will direct them towards them. So please, at any time, you can use the chat function. Normally, in the before times, this would be a face-to-face in real life meeting. And of course, you could raise your hand at any time. MS Teams has a virtual raise hand. So again, in the Q&A section later on, if you'd like to raise your hand and ask a question of our panelists, we would really love and encourage that. And if a question occurs to you later on tonight or in the days to come, or by chance, if you're watching this on the recorded replay, of course, you can't raise your hand then, feel free, please, to send us email, and we'll share the address for that at the end of the night, but it is plp@seco.ca is the best, easiest way to reach us. So with that in mind, we are going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we are going to share with you tonight. If you did join our information meeting in December, some of this is going to be a little bit familiar, but we have tried to make it a different format and a little bit shorter on some of the nitty-gritty stuff so that we can get to those more exciting parent and student panels later on. But we will cover a little bit of what is PLP. So if you've been told that you're going to come tonight to find out what we're all about and more about what we, how we learn, that's what we're going to cover right off the top. We will talk a little bit about the application process right away, because that is something that is Different and special about us is sort of these steps you have to go through to join and learn with us. So we'll make sure everyone understands what that's all about. And then, like I mentioned, we'll have some parents and students, and happy then to stay and answer, teachers will stay and answer the questions that you might have. So that is our plan for tonight. So I'm going to just speak at you for a little bit here. And again, as questions come up, please feel free to use that chat function or just sort of note them to yourself, and you can ask later on questions to the students, parents, or teachers of things that might be of interest in this presentation. But right off the top, what is PLP? So we describe the Performance Learning Program as being three core ideas: project-based learning, technology for learning, and learning beyond the classroom. But what does that actually really mean? Well, here's another way of kind of thinking about those three ideas. We try to learn in the classroom as if we are in the real world, because, hey, we are. So the work that we do, it's the same curriculum as all students are taking in grades 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But what we try to do is create projects that situate that learning within real life. We use technology, that's no surprise. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight. But in the real world, in the workplace, in post-secondary education, pretty much everywhere now, technology is a core part of how you get things done. So we like to say that the work you will do in school feels more like the work you might do in the real world. And then learning beyond the school means that there is lots of fantastic opportunity beyond the school walls. And that might be virtually doing meets and greets like we're doing tonight, reaching out to people who are working in interesting places, doing interesting things, incorporating their voices in our projects. It might mean day trips, field trips, and something that is unique in a way to the PLP program are our extended overnight field studies, which we will give you a little bit more information about tonight as well. Some people I know really want right away to know, what does it look like, you know, for my schedule, or what kind of courses do I take, or what's different about PLP if I join the PLP program, or if I'm just in the regular classes at Seekover and other schools. So this is really the core program for our junior students, PLP 8 and 9. It's the same core courses that you would take if you weren't in the program. So things like English, social studies, math, science. At high school, you will have what we call electives, which are those non-core courses. PLP has one that is unique to us. That's called Maker, which is really a combination of a bunch of different disciplines: art, design, infotech. The careers component of grade 8 and 9 is what we call in our PGP, or our personal growth plan component, goal setting, habits, personal productivity. So that is really the basket of 5 inside the timetable courses that students would get. Outside of the program, they would have 3 other courses that they would mix and mingle with the sort of general student population. So usually that's French, PE, and another elective, or maybe even more electives of choice. Things like music, band, choir, maybe other rotations like foods, tech ed, drama, art, etc. I'm sure there will be questions more about that, so we will address those later. And I do see some things flying through in the chat here, and I think Petra and Emily will collect those, or maybe even address them in the chat as we go. Okay, so if it's the same core courses as everybody else, what's different about PLP? What is the sort of enhancement that you might be experiencing if you're joining the program? So the content mastery, that's really what we would expect people who are in all subjects to be able to say that they made it through the school year and they have a good mastery of their social studies, science, whatever the subject is, topics. But what's different about PLP is the program wraps around other skills that, you know, as teachers, we have worked on and identifying that we think students need to be both successful in high school, but really successful in life. And you're seeing some of those on your screen right here. Communication, problem solving, collaboration, these things that we talk about a lot and you hear about a lot, but what do they actually mean? We as teachers firmly believe that students don't just develop these spontaneously or organically. They have to actually be taught, practiced, failed at, critique provided, revised, and tried again. And in a deliberate, meaningful way, these are built into the problem-solving, problem-based learning challenge framework that the students approach all of the work that they undertake. As teachers, we were really driven to this by like this quote here as a firm belief that like the things that students are doing in school now are really, it's hard to imagine where they might be in the workplace, even within the even in their years of school, secondary, post-secondary. We don't know yet the technologies that they will use. We don't know that the jobs that they might have. So the old preparation of our experience in the past probably will not prepare students for this new reality. And this is backed up by science. The OECD has done a lot of work on this, looking at the readiness of school graduates for both a post-secondary success, but also just employability in the marketplace, and found that the 4 out of 5 employers found that high school graduates had gaps in their preparation. And at higher ed, 1 in 6 students really came to the academy without the required critical thinking or content or the application of content knowledge in what was then an unfamiliar setting, and realized that as teachers here in secondary, this is what we were trying to do: create students that are agents of their own success. So yes, we are teachers of social studies, science, math, English, but really what we are is teachers of agency. We want our learners to move from this spectrum of being compliant students to engaged and then on their way to being empowered learners. This is the skill set that will set them up for that success in whatever realm they choose to explore after they leave us in this building here. So that is a long way of saying that PLP is the place for curious learners that want to make their time in school count. You can Google any of these terms here because they're all kind of teachery jargony. They actually do mean specific things, but we are a program, a team of teachers that are working together to integrate our instruction, integrate the technology in a meaningful way, and integrate authentic learning experiences that works to drive at deeper learning, design thinking. We believe strongly that project-based learning is the framework for that. Hopefully it is fun. And I think maybe you can put that to the test when you talk to some of the kids in just a bit. So that's really the sort of the what. Here's the why and the how. We are believers that PBL, project-based learning, is a framework for creating a context that matters. So it's that content that is important. You still have to cover the basics, the curriculum, because it's with that information that you are able to do something with it. But it's beyond that. Here's what most parents think of when they hear the word project, right? This is actually something that made the rounds on the internet several years ago, and we like to share it because this is not what we are talking about when we talk about project-based learning. I like the results here. The science project causes 75% of kids to cry and 90% of parents to yell. Average of 15 hours of family time sacrifice. So apparently the urban myth is this was handed in alongside the child's project after a tense, sweat-filled weekend, working on something that came at the end of a long cycle, a project, a unit. They would then create the project at the end. That's not what we're talking about at all. So if you're looking at this graph here, the top of the screen kind of shows what a what we sometimes call a dessert project. All the learning happens and then the project is at the very end. It's that thing that, yeah, you take home, sweat over the weekend and then turn it in en masse for your teacher to mark and give you a grade back. That's not what we talk about project-based learning in PLP. What is more common is what you're seeing at the bottom here. Many of those same skills, practices that you would find in every other classroom are present in our classroom. So the activities, workshops, lectures, yes, homework, research, quizzes, maybe even tests. But what you're seeing is a lot more of these other things that probably mirror what actually happens in workplaces where people are doing information work. So a project launch, something at the very beginning that sets up and drives the inquiry. We are learning this because, or here is the question that we need to find the answer to. The project then becomes the vehicle for that learning to be carried out and to drive the inquiry. So we have these benchmarks and a lot of reflection. The students, as agents of their own learning, need to be actively involved in actually making transfer, taking ideas from one context and being able to apply them in another. Lots of feedback, lots of revision, lots of opportunity to take critique and make work better, culminating in an event, some kind of public presentation, an authentic demonstration. And we actually had that this afternoon for our grade 8s who have just wrapped up a deep dive and look into working with words, a poetry project, and they presented, unfortunately due to current events, it was online, but we presented a coffee house format where we invited the world to come and join us and see an exhibition of their work. So that public performance, that public presentation is key. And then lastly, at the end, they will reflect on their learning, because as I'm sure they can tell you, because we say it often, we don't really believe you learn very much by doing, you learn from reflecting on what you have done. So we thought that it might be interesting for, especially for those who don't really know much about what we do, to take a look. So Petra actually spent a couple hours after school today putting together a video. Petra, do you want to just introduce what we're about to see?
I'm going to try, but I'm having some Teams difficulties. So can you just let me know if you can hear me or see me or both?
Both, yeah.
Okay, ideally. So we're talking about the work video?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So traditionally at the end of the year, one of the things we do is as Brian's been talking about and you're getting a sense of, one of the things we believe in the performance learning program is we are strong believers in creating a team. We have learning teams at each of our grade levels, and we really work hard to foster that collaborative sense, the community we're working with through different events. And one of those things we do is at the end of the year, we really put an emphasis on that celebration. And unfortunately, the last couple of years, those have been virtual. Fingers crossed, not this year, but we always have a year-end banquet. And one of the things we do at the banquet is look at all the work we've done throughout the year. So as Brian said, I sort of put together a highlight video of some of the work and the projects that our learners have done. And you'll see some samples of that in here. It's definitely not every project we do. It definitely was a bit rushed, so don't judge any chops that might come along. And because I cut down what is usually a 15-minute celebration of all the projects throughout the year across all the grade levels, across all the subject areas, down into something that people might actually want to watch that didn't do all the work. So it gives you a good sense of some of the projects. It's a good opportunity for all of you to think of some questions to ask our student panel later, and even our parents who are here as well. And yeah, I hope it is not as terrible as I'm thinking it is right now. So here we go, Brian.
First outdoor activity.
talking about Dr. Bonnie Henry, the lead health officer in the province of British Columbia.
The Canadian who we would like to argue did the most is the Right Honourable Stephen Harper.
Home is wherever I'm with you. Oh, let me come home. Home is wherever I'm with you.
I used to rule the world. Seas would rise when I gave the word. Now in the morning I sleep alone. Sweep the streets I used to own. I used to roll the dice, feel the fear in my enemy.
Ranking Stuffies! Technical!
With me now, come with me now. Come with me now.
Fine arts!
I'll show you what I want.
DI!
Now leave. You are a saucy boy.
Yo ho, a pirate's life for me. We pillage, we plunder, we rifle and loot. Drink up, me hearties, yo ho.
Slow down, you move too fast. You picked me the morning last, just kicking down the cobblestones, looking for fun and feeling groovy. Ba-da-da-da-da-da, feeling groovy.
Performance learning program.
So that gives you a good sense of some of the learning our learners do. You saw the driving questions, the different projects across the different subject areas, the integration, and then of course coming together at our exhibitions, which I know some of you came to in the spring as well. It's a great overview of what can be done despite COVID and restrictions and all the rest of it. But I think a little later on, we'll look at some of the things we hope to do as well in the future as well. You can see the PLP learners really do work hard and they learn how to learn, which is overall our goals. Thanks, Brian.
So just to summarize then, PBL, project-based learning, this is really why we are such firm believers that this is the methodology that we use in our classroom. We really want the students to be learners, and that means they need to be able to answer, why are we learning this? You saw even that video, the driving question frames the inquiry from the very beginning. PBL gives the students that opportunity to practice real skills. We like to try and identify where in the world is this work being done? Where would you use this knowledge? Where would you use these practices, these processes? And as much as possible, they then do that. beyond the school. So we do believe that learning is a process, not just something that gets completed at the end. Like we said, the project is the vehicle that contains all of the learning. And one of our favorite expressions is we want the students to fail often. Fail as an acronym for first attempt in learning. So we take risks, we try things, sometimes they work, often they don't. We get feedback, we revise, we do it again, we do it better, we get smart. So deeper learning means that we are an inquiry-based program. We think, we question, we support our arguments. We work on complex problems that are connected to the actual world that we live in. We are a highly collaborative program, meaning the students work in teams and with each other. That's not to say all of the work that they do is group work, not at all, but it certainly is. Most of the work in the real world is not done in isolation, and that's true for our classroom as well. The idea of it being called the performance learning program is because we get to know our students really well, and we want them to perform at the limits of their capacity and potential. That means stretching beyond often a comfort zone. We're talking about the cognitive comfort zone. We want people to stretch, to grow, to reach, and take those academic risks that pay off. Design thinking means that there is a heavy emphasis on learning by making, solving real world problems, and being a creator, an innovator, a maker, a thinker. That is really the PBL piece. And I know I see some great questions coming up, which I'll let Petra and Emily collate, and we'll maybe ask some of the students, or we can address them specifically as we go. The technology component of our program is maybe what we're maybe best known for, because it's probably the easiest to spot. Or if you walked by our classroom, you would see, and in that video package there, you saw it as well, that the iPad is easy to see because it's different from what you would see in other classrooms. But really, it's not something that as teachers we think about or focus on too much, because it just is innate to the way we learn. And we're really guided by this idea, the quote that you're seeing on the screen here. We are living in 2022 now. We have access to a tool that allows us as teachers to design projects, to design work, to design tasks for the students that can ask them to do more meaningful things, more authentic things, more relevant, and more creation-based rather than just consumption-based than has ever been possible before. So as teachers, as educators, we get really excited about that, because it opens up incredible opportunities that we could not do without the device. So the iPad enables us to do things that are really exciting and different. Petra, I want to add something?
No, I would agree with everything.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I've kind of already let the cat out of the bag. You probably already know that our chosen tool is the iPad. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. What does it mean for our students on a day-to-day basis? Well, we don't wait to go to the computer lab. CECOV is lucky. We are a resourced school. It does have access to technology outside of our classroom, but we are the only one-to-one program actually in all of North Vancouver District, meaning our students have their own personal device that they use in our classes every day for the work that they do. We don't use a lot of traditional, or I guess maybe even maybe archaic resources like old textbooks and things like that, because it really doesn't suit the work that the students do. Instead, like I said, they're creating, designing, filming, podcasting, and publishing and sharing to the world. And the technology makes that possible. There is in our program some direct technology instruction, especially in the early grades. It's part of that maker course where we actually talk about how to use these tools. One of the reasons we like the iPad, though, is that the barrier for understanding and getting up to speed with that is pretty accessible and low. So it's not a program where you have to be super techie or familiar with technology. If you are, you can certainly thrive, but this is technology for learning, and it's something that everybody is capable of doing and picks up really quickly and thrives. We are an iPad-based program, so that is our platform or device of choice. It is a required component of the program. So we often get questions about, well, can I use this kind of device instead, or I'd rather use a laptop? And we think all of those devices are great. However, in class, you will need to have an iPad. So what does that look like? It is a personal device. So the iPad you use is purchased by your family. It's maintained by you and managed by you. And it shouldn't be a surprise then that this is a significant expense. You're seeing in the small print there the current school year. So for this current school year, we spec'd out and recommended 2 different options for purchase. Those prices are just there as sort of guidance. The technology requirements for September 2022, we have not released yet. So I would say here, it's in bold, we do not recommend making a new device purchase now, or even in the next month or 2, once you are accepted into the program. We recommend you wait. In April, we will be having a new student orientation meeting where we will go into detail on exactly what we think would be the best tool for you to learn with in September. We would recommend, if you are thinking of purchasing a new device, that you wait until then, because who knows? We always want to make sure that we're making the best recommendation available at the time. Okay. So if there's any further questions on the technology or the iPad and things like that, we can certainly take those a little bit later. The last core component of the program, and our overview here, is field schools, or learning beyond the school. We believe that you live in the real world, you should learn there too. We try as much as possible to take the learning outside. Like I said, sometimes that might just be for the day. It might literally be for the hour, just stepping outside the classroom. We're very lucky to be living and learning in the Sea Cove community and neighborhood, beautiful nature on our doorstep, and often our projects will take us there. Interesting places, interesting people. Like we said, the projects we do are aligned with what's happening in students' lives. So they need to go and meet people, talk to people, interview people, and work with people beyond who they have in their classroom. Don't just read about places, go there. So again, we're very lucky that over the years, we have been able to take students to amazing, interesting places. Field schools, the name school is right there in the name. And sometimes, especially students who have not been on one of our trips before, they think it's going to be like some sort of fancy, fun vacation. And the fun part, I hope, is true. The vacation part is not. It is a field school because you are learning, working, and we're going somewhere for a purpose. So I think, Petra, do you want to we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like, but I think you also made another little video that just gives a little bit of a look into what the field school experience is like.
Yes. So the second video really is just a highlight of some of the field schools that we did prior to the pandemic. This fall, we were lucky enough, just in that wonderful opening window where we all were taking our masks off, maybe, and a little bit more loose. We actually did do, for the first time in 18 months, we went for some day trips with our PLP 10 students. So a little later, maybe you can ask them about that. So we do try to do field studies as much as possible, grounded locally as well, whether that's even during the height of COVID. You saw in some of that work video, we were walking down to the Cove, and Emily worked with the students on making a walking tour. And so we do try to situate our learning outside the walls of the school as much as possible. And occasionally that looks like spectacular things, like you can see on this slide, and that you'll get to see in this video as well. And so the highlight video here really is the last of the normal times. It highlights the last PLP group we took to Oregon, which is some of our learners who are now in grade 10. So I tried to clip it so that you see the people that you'll actually ask questions to tonight. They look a lot younger. It also shows the Alberta trip, which those learners are now in PLP 11. And you'll see them a little later on as well. And the last trip we took to New Mexico with our PLP 12s, who are now graduated as well. So here's a little bit of a highlight.
We're going to Oregon! Saw a dismal niche! Saw the mountains in Columbia! And zip lining! And rock! Visited the Hatfield Marine Science Center. Racing crabs! Visited Beverly Beach at sunset. Saw sea lions! And to Oregon!
Hey! He got a real long reach in the derrick when he leans. He been all around the world on the big old rigs with the welders and the trucks on the black gold rush and the diesel burning cat motors growling in the mud. You better hire him on. He's the roughest neck around. He got the power in his hand to pull the dragons from the ground. Yeah. Yeah. All right, here we go. 35.
I believe our video is stalled. Brian, maybe you can just come back on, and we got a sense of that from the clips we saw.
I think Teams is being a little less than cooperative, so
Yeah,
I'm not sure if it was the end or a bit of a rough cut there, but yeah, a little taste at least.
A little taste.
Okay, well, we're just rolling with some of the punches here. So thank you for your patience, everyone. Okay, so just yeah, as Petra I think mentioned, the pandemic has certainly put a bit of a wrinkle into this part of our experience, but we are optimistic that we will be able to resume the offering of some of these opportunities moving forward. And if not, then we learned we need to be nimble, flexible, and pivot. So that's kind of the posture with which we are approaching the future. So we are looking ahead to revisit some of our favorite destinations and learning opportunities. What's really unique about PLP Field Schools is that the projects are planned interwoven with the curriculum. So we're already looking ahead to the next school year, thinking about the instructional roadmap for the different students that we know we're going to teach, and designing and tailoring those opportunities that we know both connect with curriculum, with the interests of the students, and with the projects that and connections that we have made over years. So traditionally, we do offer a field school at each grade level. And you're seeing on the screen here our proposal for the next school year, just to give you a little bit of an idea of some of the places. And I know Petra selected some video clips that connected to a few of these to give you that taste, and costs. So field schools are optional. They are something that are cost recovery, meaning they have to pay for themselves. So depending on how many students are participating and duration, et cetera, like that, the cost can vary, but it gives you a little bit of an indication. We do always, or I shouldn't say always, we do traditionally also have a field school for grade 8 students. And that usually happens very early in the school year. We haven't included that on this list here because we still don't know yet on what that what the climate will look like at that time. But certainly, again, it's something that we are keeping a close eye on and would be able to pivot and communicate very soon. So if you're in grade 7 now, thinking about grade 8, stay tuned. We'll have more to share later in the year.
And I would just add to what Brian said, that especially the junior grade level. So as you saw in the video with the Oregon trip and the Rocky Mountain Field School, we work really hard to try to have every learner included. But as integrated as these projects are in the learning, we find ways to diversify because many students cannot participate for many reasons. You know, they have other options and things going on. So as things happen, we also make these as essential as they are on these field schools, there is opportunities to learn at home as well. So we make these projects and we form them around the learners we have, and we try to incorporate everyone, whether or not they can actually come on the field school.
All right, so in summary then, what is PLP? We are real world learning. We try to offer experiences both in the classroom, within the projects, with technology, with field studies that allow students to have experience that is different from the average school experience. In engagement surveys that we have done here at the school in the past, our students have consistently polled as more enthusiastic, more invested in their learning than their peers. We are a secondary enhanced program, meaning that we are the core academic experience, but we have enhancements. So you're hearing about some of those things today, use of the technology, the opportunity to participate in field schools, etc. We are the only technology program in North Vancouver that offers a one-to-one experience, and we have been recognized as an Apple Distinguished School, which if you were wondering what's over Petra's corner there, that's what that banner is all about. And really, I'll just give you the bad news. That does not entitle us to any discounts or anything like that before you ask. And really all that it is actually membership in a nice club of amazing schools around the world. In fact, there's only, I think, 18 distinguished schools in Canada that we are a part of, which is a learning community. So it's a great opportunity for our students to connect with other students doing similar work, and for us as teachers to be part of a professional learning community around the world that allows us to bounce ideas off of and share inspiration.
And occasionally visit them.
And yes, and occasionally visit them. And in normal times, certainly they would visit us. We usually have a lot of visitors who come to see the kind of work that students are doing, the great work that students are doing. All right, now is a prompt for you to get your questions ready, because we are about to pass the meeting over to you. So hopefully you have already thought of some great questions. We have a bunch of our students hanging out here that are just waiting for you to ask something nice and juicy, and some parents as well. But before we do that, I thought I would just address some of the top level questions that we get asked all the time that you might also be wondering. So I thought I would just address these so that we can move on to the other questions. So we're often asked, what is the profile of a PLP student, or who is the perfect PLP student? And there is no such thing, because nobody is perfect. We're the first to admit we're certainly not perfect. We think everybody has room to grow. So there is no single type of student. Generally, though, our students share a curiosity about the world. They want to make their time in school count. Most importantly, they're open to learning how to think. So PLP is really less about what and more about like how. What should students expect? Students should realize that we look like a regular classroom, and in many ways we are a regular classroom, but there are some things that might catch some people off guard, and that is the frankness, bluntness that students with each other and teachers with students share critique and reflect on work. So a willingness and openness to accept peer and teacher critique, to share their work publicly. We already talked about how that's an important part of what we do. So all the work that we do is available publicly. I've already seen in the chat people mentioning the learner portfolios, so you can already get a sense of everything our students do is out there online. We talked about how collaboration and working together is an important component of the team that we build inside the classroom. So that's something you should know about before you, as you think about joining that team. And you should embrace challenge and hard work. Speaking of that, we're always asked, is there more homework in PLP? And the students can answer that for themselves in a second. I'm sure they will say yes, or have some choice words about homework, because as students, don't we all? As teachers, we'd say, I don't know if there's more or not. Sometimes there is, maybe sometimes there isn't, but there is certainly more thinking. That's my favorite way to answer this question. And I know Ms. Willems-Petra would probably say there probably isn't more homework, but often the students are actually more invested in the work that they do, and that sometimes then translates into a feeling of, or maybe more time spent on the work that they're doing. We talk about them doing beautiful work, they're proud to share it, and sometimes that does take more time and effort. Okay, is there a fee for PLP? We're often listed alongside other district programs and academies that often have an upfront fee that you have to pay to participate. No, there is no fee charged to join PLP. There are possibly small fees for individual courses, like nominal costs for supplies in Maker, but really no, there's no program fee. The costs associated with the program involve the iPad purchase. So we already said that's a personal owned device. So the family purchases that device. It's in a school supply that they bring for PLP classes. And as we mentioned previously, field schools do have fees. They are cost recovery. So the cost of the trip is the cost that is paid. How are students selected? So you know that it's an by application. What does that really mean? Well, we are not trying to find that perfect PLP student, as I said before. So the application requirement and process is not about screening students. It's not about finding suitable or unsuitable students. It's really about this, what we're having tonight, a conversation with the applicant, family, teacher references, and us to make sure that you understand what the PLP learning environment looks like, and that really we want to know that you are going to be successful and thrive within our community. So the process, the application process, starts that conversation by completing the video, by completing some of the work that you do through the process. It's like you're completing a little project. So you might like that, you might not like that. Both answers are okay, by the way, but it's the conversation that can come up around that we think is really important. We do welcome applicants from diverse learning backgrounds. You know, there is not we ask for your report cards, right? But that is not because we're looking for a certain grade average or anything like that. It just helps us get a bigger, fuller picture of who you are. We are most interested in meeting you through all of this process to see how curious you are about the world and how much desire do you have to learn. I've already seen a couple questions about spaces available. There is no hard or fast number of how many spaces are available. It really depends on how many applications are received and the ability of the school to organize timetables to meet student needs. So that's, and again, one of the reasons why we have this application process. It's one of the reasons why this happens so early in the school year. You might be thinking January is very long time when September 2022 doesn't feel like months away. But behind the scenes, we are getting ready for September, and part of that is understanding how much interest there is in the program. All right, I know many people on the call tonight probably have already started your application or maybe have already applied. There might also be people who are hearing about PLP for the first time tonight. So here is just a brief overview of the process. We use a platform called Shobi for learning in our classroom, and you use it as well as an applicant. So you will create an account on Shobi. You must submit your application portfolio. That includes a short video that you make. It includes some documents and a teacher reference. And you will come and talk to us. So we have individual interviews that are going to start next week. We are very excited to meet you. It's been exciting seeing everybody sign up, and I know there are still some spots available though. So if you have not already signed up, I encourage you to grab that spot, the spots that are available remaining quickly. And then on February 16th, we have the group activity. That is going to be online this year. So on Wednesday afternoon, 4 p.m., February 16th, we will have a group activity. Details for that will be released very soon. Please visit our website, plp.ccove.ca. There will be a banner at the very top that will have more details and a link for how to join that event on that day. Okay, I saw someone just ask, when are applications due? I'm so glad you asked. You will not have to procrastinate for very long to finish your application, because it is due on Monday, I believe. Yes. So January 31st is the application deadline. If you are just hearing about PLP for the first time tonight, that might seem very short. So feel free to get in touch with me if you're feeling that's an unrealistic deadline. But January 31st is when we would like you to have created your Showbie account and uploaded as many of the components as you can by that date. The individual interviews run, I said next week, pardon me, it's the week after, February 7th through 14th. Actually, that is not correct. The individual interviews are next week, I think, because no, maybe that is correct. Anyways, you have made your individual interview requests. So whenever they are, they are. And then, as I said, we have the group activity on the 16th. The first offer of acceptance, this is when you'll receive an email from us with the information on joining the program, will be sent to you on February 25th. And that comes a week prior to the district transfer deadline. So if you are a student that is not currently a Cove Cliff or a Dorothy Linus English or Sherwood Park English student, then you are going to a different high school by you need to require a transfer to Seacove to come here. So, or if you're from outside the North Vancouver School District or not naturally coming to Seacove, you'll have to request transfer to this school. We will send this information to you on the 25th, so there's no need to really worry about that now, but you will have that week to complete that information prior to the deadline. Okay, that is a lot of information to understand, because I did not do a very smooth job of presenting it. The best place to get that information and more is our website. So if you have not already visited plp.ccove.ca, that timeline, those dates are all summarized there. Also there on that page are the detailed application instructions. So exactly what you need to do, exactly how to do them are detailed on that page. Please visit, find those, and if you have any questions whatsoever as you work through your application, please feel free to email plp@ccove.ca, or you can call the school as well, although it's probably easier to reach us through email, and then we can contact you back. Okay, that is the formal program, which means we are on to the best part of the night, which is our student and parents. And I hope, Emily and Petra, you've been collecting some great questions. How would you like to move forward? Should we just, do you have some questions ready to go that we can direct at a few people? Or, okay, you do. Okay, good. I'll take a break then and hand it over to you guys.
Okay, maybe I'll start, hi everyone, by just introducing our parents first, maybe Brian, if that's okay with you. Just so, and then I'll follow with our students, and then maybe we'll ask each of them some questions. So I want to thank all our parents who were willing to come today. So I see Wendy already turned her camera on. Thank you, Wendy. So we have Wendy Kennedy, who's a parent of one of our PLP 9 learners. We have Anne, who's a parent of one of our PLP 11. Yeah, I paused. I was like, was it 12? It was 11 still. Learners. And we have Sherry Coop, who's a learner. Sherry, I put you in our classes, which I know is your dream come true, because then you get to come on the field studies. Sherry is one of our parents of a PLP 9 learner and a PLP graduate alumni. So maybe as parents, I know we do have some questions from the chat as well that we'll kind of circle back to, but maybe just, is there anything tonight that sort of struck you and particularly that you guys felt like, oh yeah, that's why PLP was a great decision, or that's been re-emphasized, or anything you've been thinking about that you're dying to share? Silence. I left it vague on purpose. I know. Sherry put her hand up. Okay, Sherry, go for it.
Yes, sorry, I don't have Teams, the app. I don't have it downloaded on my laptop, Petra, so I can't turn my camera on.
Yeah, no problem.
But I think I've shared with you, I feel strongly that I should have my camera on. So anyway, I apologize.
I'm used to the void now.
Yeah, back to the question, which I've actually forgotten now, Petra.
Oh, I just said, is there anything that struck you tonight that you were like, oh yeah, that's why I decided to choose PLP, or that's why our students are learning in PLP, or anything along those lines?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I guess, having, my older son, as you know, having been in PLP for his entire high school education, and now having my younger son in his second year. And, being a professional in the working world, I see that the tools, the skills that are fostered and developed in PLP are real world skills. And I think it's the fostering of the curiosity in kids and having them actually really think hard, like to the point where sometimes it could be seriously frustrating. However, as a parent, it's actually so gratifying to see that your child is actually learning. It's not just repetition, but it sticks. And I think that is truly what sets PLP apart.
Thanks, Sherry. Did you want to chime in, Wendy? I saw you had unmiked, and then.
Oh, I would totally second what Sherry said. I think that the opportunities that the kids get, the software that you provide to them, are things I've actually used in business. The skills that they come out with, the critical thinking, work in groups, the way that the information is.
It's not complicated. I was in the middle of something. It's only offered once.
I will try to mute. There we go. Keep going, Wendy. Sorry, I found it.
It really, really sets the kids up, I think, for success in whatever they do later. It's not a rote learning, regurgitation, pass a test and forget what you learned. It's not like that at all. And I think that it's the future of how education is going to move toward. And these kids just have the opportunity to experience it first.
I hope that's true. That's what we believe. Anne, I saw your hand up as well.
Yeah, I was going to add that I saw a comment from a parent about self-directed and the concerns about self-directed. And I'm like, it's not self-directed. Yeah. It's motivated, it's engaged, it's choosing things that are of interest, but it's directed the whole way until you get to the point where they're at grade 11 and that you lose less of that direction because they're able to direct themselves. They're able to take on, they've got it so clearly in their head how to organize a project, how to manage a project, how to manage a group of people on a project, that you've given them all those skills and it's so ingrained in them now that they are able to go out and do it themselves. And I had a girlfriend come to the presentations who's in advertising, and she said, these kids are presenting at a higher level than the presentations I get at work. So I think that's kudos to you, because it's amazing to see the kids now at that point. And one comment is, my daughter Grace was talking about managing something, and she mentioned that she said, I have backups for my backups. If things go wrong, I can back them up. And I said, well, you didn't have that in grade 7 or 8, definitely. But I said, you've learned that skill that you need to know how to pivot quickly and have a backup plan. And that's a skill that they've got in this program, a huge skill in life.
That's awesome. Thank you. And then just maybe one other quick question, and then we'll sort of maybe pivot to the kids. I know sometimes, and I know some of you dreaded this question because it's an ongoing war, of course, all the time, is sometimes people worry about the iPad and the screen time and the issues around it. Do you feel like it's better over time, or do you think it's something that like they're, because I agree the tools and the management are something we work on, but do you feel that also is something that is built? And
I think you build it over time, and I think you build a development with your child of kind of understanding your child. So we have a check-in, like, how much more work do you have to do? You know when this has to go, you know when your iPad has to go away. So manage your time accordingly. And as a parent, checking in to make sure that they're on task. And I just look at her and say, do you have homework? Yep. Okay. Let's switch to what we're doing on the iPad right now and make sure that we're on our time frame. And again, they build it over time. You get to solve that over the course of a couple of years.
I agree. I think that it's a challenge because it's not something that we were used to managing previously, and there's definitely a need to use it for homework. So where do you draw the line? And I think we have a time at night that it has to go away. So again, it's managed when you come home from school and you get the stuff done and be prepared to put it away.
We definitely talk about it being a tool, and so I really like that analogy as well, because it is a tool you learn how to use. Sherry, and then I'll do the kids.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think, learning to balance screen time is actually a life skill that these kids need to learn now. Like, it's a different world than what we grew up in. This is actually a life skill that I think is really important. So it actually forces us to have these conversations. And I think too that in grade 8, the fractions of our time project is so useful because they actually see right there, the data is right there, what they're like, how much time they're actually spending on their device. I know that was insightful for my kid last year for sure. But yeah, I think too, I'm not saying it's easy. I think screen time period is difficult. I don't think PLP makes it better or worse. I think if your kid is vulnerable to struggling with that, they're going to be vulnerable whether they're in a traditional stream or in PLP. I really don't think that the iPad is the deal breaker. That's just my experience.
Great.
Maybe I'll just ask the room if there's anyone who wants to ask a question directly to the parents. And of course, if you put a question in the chat, I put it on the sheet and I will direct it to the right person. A lot of them are teachery ones that we can tackle first, and then parents and students can chime in. But before I say to the parents, oh, we can hang out and just turn off your cameras and relax, is there anyone who specifically wants to ask the parents anything specific? Practicing my wait time. Okay. Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, and thanks, Sherry. If you guys can hang out, and then maybe if there's anything else that comes up, I might ask, but thank you. Maybe kids, if you can turn on your camera. So with us tonight, we have wonderful students who are so awake and with us. Oh, there you all are. That looks good. So from PLP 8 on up, PLP 8, we have Susan. We have Susan, so they just know you are. You don't have to add Matt. And Jackson as well, who were part of our poetry presentation this afternoon, who have hung in there for this. So I have to give them mad props because it's been a long day for them. Dana and Silas, who are in, no, I think Silas is around. My camera is, don't ask. But they're both in PLP 9 and are here. And they did their poetry presentations yesterday, so they're exhausted too, but they're doing very well. And in grade 10, we have Amy, and I believe some of you already met Jacob in the chat. We'll talk about that later. And in PLP 11, you see Grace hanging out there. And our intrepid PLP 12er, Izzy Leonard there, Isabel. That might be the first time I've ever called you Isabel. So all of them are here. And I promised that we would sort of work backwards for them. And I think I told them that I would probably ask, some things that students want to know. We can cover some of the nitty gritties of some of the things later on. But especially as you go up in high school, you like as you're at the 11, 12 level and even the 10, you have fewer PLP classes and more regular classes. What do you guys see as the biggest differences in your learning experience? And I know that 8s and 9s can't really answer that so much yet, because I mean their other classes are PE right at the moment. So what do you think, Izzy and Grace? Sorry to put the pressure on you. What do you think is the biggest difference you face? And do you think you can handle it, I guess?
I thought Grace was going to answer.
I know she's going to wait for you. I knew she would.
There's a lot of differences. I think probably the biggest one, it's kind of a weird thing to say, but the learning I do in PLP, it's stuff I'd want to talk to people about. So it's like things I come home and I'm like talking to people, or I'm sharing with my friends. Or I'm like, oh, look at this. And like in other classes, I feel like I'm just kind of doing it to get the grade. Whereas in PLP, one of the things I really find with it is I care about the learning so much more than I do in my other classes. So that's something for me.
I like totally agree with that. Also, I find that in PLP classes, just generally, it's a lot deeper as well, which I think kind of adds to I want to talk about this, because you just have so many thoughts in your head, you want to share them with everyone. But when you're in other classes, kind of, for me, I'm in a lot of the scientific ones. It's just kind of like you're learning it, you're trying to get the good marks, and there's not much extra going on there. It's just kind of doing the work and learning. And in PLP, it's a lot more of that kind of thinking that you can share with people and kind of build off of in your regular life as well.
Do you think maybe this is a good moment, because I know we saw some questions already about it, and maybe it's one to put Izzy on the spot. We also taught Izzy's brother, who's a PLP alumni, who's in university right now. Oh my gosh, he's 2 years in, isn't he? Oh, that's appalling. Do you think you are going to be prepared for university, even though you did this crazy thing called PLP?
I think definitely. Even just within like doing the application process this year, like I found at PLP, you have so much more experience with like talking to people, and even like things like sending emails or like asking questions and like getting everything done. You're so much more prepared. Not so much more, I don't want to brag or anything, but PLP gives you these skills that I feel like you don't get just doing it the regular way. And definitely it doesn't push you back any farther in university. It may even give you another upper hand. And like my brother, he was always a shy person, and he was in PLP, did a lot, like he did the full 5 years, and he talks about how in like when he has group discussions or seminars, he's one of the loudest ones.
Really? And Izzy got her own good news in November. Can you share it?
Yes, I'm going to U Ottawa. I'm even wearing a sweater.
Nice. And what are you studying?
I'm studying communications and sociology, and it's co-op.
Ah, that's so cool. She's gonna have a great time. So that's awesome. And Izzy's a great example, as with many of our other learners who do go on to university, and are capable and prepared for that, and enjoy it too. And I think you did a great example of why you feel that way as well. Definitely some questions. Maybe you guys could tell us a little bit about what maybe your favorite project was, or your favorite learning, or maybe even favorite's not the right word. Maybe it'd be like, what do you think you learned the most from? Because sometimes that's not necessarily your favorite. And maybe we start with the 10s. Maybe Amy and Jacob get to go first, and then we can work around.
Okay, yeah. So, hi, I'm Amy. I'm in grade 10, and I think that the project that I learned the most in, was able to expand my learning the most in, was one of our most recent ones that was called the Ology of Apologies. So we looked into 3 different acts of injustice that were committed by the Canadian government, and then our final product was to create a memorial that represented one of those acts, and then we presented the scale models and the concepts for our memorials at the winter exhibition. And I think in that project, I was able to expand my own learning and learn a lot. We got to go on 6 different day trips to different sites of injustices and to learn from members of communities about these acts of injustice, and taking my learning into the real world so literally was like so incredible to do. It was really, really great. Yeah.
I was cold, and I'm gonna actually wrap myself in it, but I don't know if you can all see. This is the quilt Amy made as part of the project. She's probably embarrassed now. And you can see some of the places we even went. Jacob, same answer, different?
Yep. So I'm really interested in how groups of people think, how people think in general. So my best project, the project that I found most interesting and I learned the most from, was the Nationalism Project, where we also learned how nations formed and how the nationalism of people comes, how people get their pride in their nations. And I found it really interesting, and I tried really hard on the project because I found it so interesting. So I did all this research in order to get a better understanding of the topic and like get that base understanding and know everything about it.
Dana, Susan, Jackson, any favorite things so far that you just love doing or found you learned a lot from? Or Silas?
Yeah.
Well,
Hi. My name's Dana. I'm in grade 9. I think one of my favorite projects that we've done this year was the Revolutions on Trial project. I think it really taught me a lot about communicating, seeing as we had to work with a big team, and also about public presentation, because we ended up presenting a mock trial on a revolution, and we were debating, and we had to present to a public audience that was our parents and stuff, which was kind of scary, but also taught us so many great skills.
Susan, what do you think is your biggest thing you've learned so far in grade 8? It could be like a specific part of your project or something you really love doing, or even something you hated doing that in the end you think you learned something from.
I think I was really like, for the first project that we did in Maker, the Becoming a PLP Learner,
Yeah.
I was really unexcited for that when the first like idea came out, but then like I ended up having a lot of fun with it.
Oh, that's nice. Your team was awesome in the end. You guys had such a great setup and a theme, you know, in your presentation. And that was really your first public presentation, which is kind of scary. And you guys were great in that moment where we actually got to be in person. I remember those days. What about you, Jackson? What do you think? Same question? Anything that pops into your mind from this year so far?
Probably the project we did the work with the Outsiders book, mostly because we learned so many different like ways to do it, and it was our first shot with the exhibition, which was terrifying.
Really? What were you worried about? The people being there, or just like bringing it together?
Bit of everything.
Everything. That's true. That's true. What do you? Okay, one more quick question for Jackson first, and then Susan can answer too. What do you know now that you wish you had known when you were applying in grade 7?
Mostly just that the work is quite different than what you're used to, and it's like pretty much you know what you're doing from the start, and it's you kind of get your way to work up to it instead of just doing the work and then doing a project. And you find out the project from the start, do like work with like little milestones here and there, and then you have like the big presentation, and then you have to reflect on the work to like deepen your knowledge of it a bit.
That's great. That's a strong answer, Declan. Susan, do you want to add anything? Is there anything you thought you didn't know and wish you had?
Yeah, I didn't realize that it would be like a lot more fun and a lot more like I'm a lot more invested in school now.
That's a very good thing, and that makes me quite happy. I have to tell you all of the learners and the audience at home too, that you are definitely never do we know what you're actually going to say, and most of the time we don't even tell you the questions ahead of time. So you guys have been awesome about that. I'm just scanning through. Emily, are there any other questions do you think in the chat that I should definitely ask the students before I let them sort of? Oh, there's Silas popping in. I never know who's where.
I did like the question, what are the first days like? I don't know who could
Do you
answer
remember,
that.
Silas, like your first day? What were you most scared of?
I was probably afraid of the group projects. Like I wouldn't fit in with like the group I'm working with, really. Like how can we like effectively work as a group, right? So like I feel like that I've really improved on, like working effectively and efficiently as a group and working together as a team, right?
Yeah, I would agree as one of your teachers. Yeah, I think that's a huge skill for everyone and very difficult. Luckily, Mr. Hughes and I never have problems working as a team, and we are always calm and collected and even-handed, right, Ms. Maxwell? There's never problems.
Very, very calm.
It's been a hard day, people.
Even the grade 8s who don't know us super well know that that's not 100% true.
They were laughing a little too hard after today, so I'm not sure what that means. Nothing, right? I saw even Declan comment in the chat. So Declan, if you're around and you want to throw on your camera too, don't be shy. Anything else, students? Anything else you thought of when you talked to someone else and you're like, you've got to share that? Yeah, Amy, go for it.
Well, one thing that I wanted to talk about is that I came from out of catchment. So Seacove was not the school that I was supposed to go to for high school. And I didn't know a single person in grade 8. And I can very confidently say that in grade 10, I can work with any person in my grade. And I am friends with every single person in my grade. And like, I have found people in PLP that I can work with and effectively brainstorm and communicate with like so easily. And that's a really interesting thing about PLP is that you're bonded together right from the start. So you have to work together in these groups. And by creating that dynamic, you form skills that will help you work in groups for the rest of your life. Like just by doing a group project, you are able to take those skills and apply them to careers and university and your entire life, which is really, really cool.
You totally just remind me one last thing to ask you guys, and let's see, who haven't I called on for a while? One of the questions that comes up, and I'm only chuckling because it's not funny, but I know lots of times people will say, you talk a lot about being a learning team. Do PLP students only know PLP students and they never get to meet anyone else in the rest of the school and don't know anyone else? I see your head shaking very vigorously. Izzy, you want to take that one?
I'd like to take this one considering my class has 6 grade 12s.
Yes, you're a very small group. That's why you're with the 11, 12s, and we could talk about why that is later, but yes.
So like for my whole PLP experience, we haven't had the biggest class and I have tons of friends. So it's not like I'm just stuck to whoever is in PLP. Like it doesn't decide that at all. And like you're no different within the social aspect at school or anything. And I feel like especially since there's such huge PLP classes now as well, even less so. So you're totally integrated with everyone. It doesn't decide who you're friends with just because you're in PLP.
That's a good point. And you guys have other classes, even in grade 8, that do get some mixes of other people. Although the timetable does tend to clump you together for a bit, but you do get to meet some other people. And Seacove is a very, we are the smallest school in North Vancouver at the high school level, and it is truly a community. You will be invited onto all kinds of teams and what's the word I'm looking for? clubs and teams and clubs and all kinds of different activities as well. Okay. Maybe teachers, we can answer some of these other questions and sort of like popcorn them out, right? Brian, you're going to help me with this. I think the parents did a great job of talking about that self-directed learning. I do not, we are, as teachers, are far too much control freaks to really allow complete self-directed learning, I would say. Would you agree, Brian?
Yeah, I think the answer was, I think Grace, I think Anne provided the great answer, is it's like a release of control. It's like a funnel. So the grades 8s and 9s, as I said, they have skills that need to be developed and learned in practice. They aren't ready. It's not free school. They are not self-directed in that sense. Their inquiry, though, often has it's more open-ended, and there are more choices, more options within the project work that they do. But yeah, that's something that is a gradual funnel, and there's more free choice, more options for students at the senior grades once they've actually developed and scaffolded and built some skills that allows them to be successful.
And then just about the other classes outside of PLP at the junior levels 8 and 9, that tends to be fewer, but again, as Brian said on that slide, that it really does depend on the course offerings for PLP and what happens from year to year, but that does funnel as they get older. Right. So as you get more options in, say, science or math, then those pieces for sure are not part of PLP. And students do take PE outside of PLP, French outside of PLP, and their electives, and LAC if they have a support block as well. And maybe this is a good moment to talk about IEPs and support. Brian, do you want to just touch on that?
Yeah. So the PLP is a program for all learners, so everyone approaches learning coming from a different place, and that includes students with IEPs, whether they be learning disabilities or on the gifted spectrum. It's like we have students without, like it's the composition of our classes is comparable to and equivalent to outside of PLP, because we think a diverse team means we have strength at all the positions that we need to field. So certainly not a barrier, and they have access to the support that they would be able to access outside of the program. It's comparable. So we are a program within the school, but we're still very much members of the broader school community, in just the same way our students are part of and plug into school teams and clubs and those other elective rotation courses. That goes for the other school supports that they would be entitled to or need to access outside of their core academic courses. No problem at all.
The class size and the number of students depends on the number of applicants and the ability of the school to offer it. We do, as an academic program, so we have English, we have social studies, we have the sciences, depending on the offerings. We do match our sizes to the rest of the school. So we are not bigger, we are not significantly smaller. We try to meet that same average as the other classes in the school. So please don't misunderstand or mishear us when you see such a great collaborative team of teachers here. There is not more of us per student number, and we have the same numbers as everyone else in the school. Yes, at the moment, there are 2 cohorts at the grade 8 level. There are 2 cohorts at the grade 9 level, 1 at the grade 10 level, and 1 that is a combined 11-12 this year. There are many reasons why that grade 12 class is so much smaller, as Izzy pointed out. It is a small group, so at that point, in order to keep those learners who we have loved so much, that we did make the choice to teach 11-12. And that is why. That is not a normal pattern. There is no normal, I guess, but it is not our regular pattern. We have had many successful graduates go on, and full cohorts as well. It just sometimes happens. Yeah. Lots of questions about the video and the application process. I think Brian covered most of that again. The information, all the information will be communicated to the emails you provided in the application process. Is that correct, Brian?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Including like the acceptance at the deadline. Okay, so all that information, if you gave us your school email, you'll get answers to your school email. Some questions about the program and how we teach. So as always, Brian, people would like to know if we are IB. We are not International Baccalaureate. People often ask us that because we are inspired by the work IB has done, but without the certification or testing or payments, I suppose. We take a little bit from that. We take a lot from other places. I know other people have been throwing in the chat, well, what about this and what about that? We fully like to learn ourselves. Emily herself, Miss Maxwell, is busy studying a graduate work right now. Brian and myself are definitely students of the world and suck up information all over, and all of that gets funneled into our teaching practice. So if we see something great, you can guarantee we're going to try it. The learners know this because things sometimes turn upside down every time we get a new idea. Like all of a sudden there was whiteboards all over the room when they came back from Christmas. And they were somewhat surprised to discover I was making them stand up all the time. Susan and Jackson probably got that most, but actually so did Dana and Silas and Declan. So yeah, we definitely borrow and use as much information as possible. So I am flattered that everyone thinks we've got these ideas from everyone else, because that means we're just sticking them together right. Do you want to add anything to that, Brian?
Nope, I think that's a great answer.
Okay, and then a couple of people asking more specifically about how math and science or academics are delivered in PLP. I'm only mildly offended that only math and science count as academics as the humanities teacher, but I know that's not how you meant it. Because that's what people always ask. Well, that sounds great for those soft skills like speaking English and reading, but what about the science? How do we teach them math? I, believe it or not, am a reformed math teacher as well. No, I did teach math, not to any of these guys on the screen. It's been a while now. PLP takes over your life, so I have not taught, quote, regular math in a long time. Those students have graduated now, but when I taught regular math, I already was on the project-based learning team, trained. And Brian will tell you that I was a heavy library user as an early math teacher, and a heavy iPad user in those days as well, even from the school's iPad. And I believe strongly that all learning can be project-based, and especially even in a subject like math. In fact, they're somewhat the best examples of this. I speak as the sister of an engineer who would tell you, yes, she does projects all the time with math. It's called engineering. So yes, project-based learning is can be taught through math. Of course, that does not mean that there aren't times where direct focused lessons happen. And sometimes it's a misnomer that project-based means that they are not getting direct instruction or maybe even a test. Many of the people on your screen right now had a poetry test the other day, much to their dismay, or even specific moments where they had to demonstrate performance. So even in a project-based math system, that does happen. We would argue that those skills then are transferred in a deeper learning method, as Brian spoke about earlier on, into that real world context. So for example, when I did teach math, one of the projects we used to do was a Pythagorean theorem project, where I actually had the students experiment with triangles to find the best build and the strongest build. And they had to go out and interview people and find out how they used the Pythagorean theorem. And I was telling one of our math teachers the other day that at the time I was didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what the students were going to come back with. And I kind of sent them out to do these interviews. And I was like, what if they don't find anyone who uses the Pythagorean theorem in everyday life? And I just sent them out to their, like they're going to be running around Deep Cove asking everyone in the world, do you know about the Pythagorean theorem? And suddenly they came back with all these amazing people who used them in ways I'd never thought of, like a baker who talked about it, a plumber who talked about it. And so all of that was really interesting. And that's an example to me of those real life learning moments. And I think you even heard Sherry say that as well, like graphing their screen time in math. They're learning how to graph, but they're using data that matters to them. So I think that sort of answers that as well. And we try to do that for all our learning as well. Yeah, how do kids do in university? Brian, do you want to talk about that? Just briefly, like, I think Izzy did a good job touching on it. Do you want to add anything?
I just fantastic. The simple answer is that some students do fantastic, some don't, but that would probably be true if they were in PLP or not. We would argue that PLP really does set them up for success. They tend to do, as Izzy was saying, they tend to do a lot of the work or the kind of work or even the tool use that they use in universities that is more typical than is often used here in typical high school. So they often are, it's a smoother transition in some ways for them. We've had students that have been accepted to institutions all across Canada, even other parts of the United States as well. Some right here close to home, from like Capilano University, UBC SFU, to like pretty exclusive programs back east. So it really, again, depends on the student. It's not one type of profile, but it's not a barrier. They do the kinds of work that really is, as Izzy kind of mentioned it, like it's easy for them to talk about the work that they've done, the experiences they've had, because they have a portfolio of examples. Right, they can demonstrate, learning growth over time, sometimes reaching back as far as grade 8, 9, even in a scholarship application or a university application. And they have evidence that they can point to that backs that up. And we have great examples of like employers or grad school admittance people doing like reference checks with us and like just basically saying, hey, they've presented all this evidence. Are they as good as they sound? And we're like, yeah, they're great. So yeah.
I see Wendy has her hand up to add as a parent as well, but just one sentence before she gets there. Even up to 10 years ago, when I taught a student in PLP, because it's our 10th year, one of them just contacted me the other day to be a reference. And that is the moment as well, right? We know their skills and can trust them up to 10 years plus later. Sorry, Wendy, go ahead.
No, that's fine. One of the things that admissions officers for different universities are saying now is that the stacks of applications they're getting all look the same. Mm-hmm. Everybody has the same GPA, everybody has their volunteer hours, everybody writes an essay, and they're looking for kids who can differentiate themselves, kids who can work in groups, kids who are going to represent them well as a university when they leave, and that employers are going to want. And they're really struggling to find those skills. And Stanford, Harvard, they have separate intake programs now, even for homeschoolers, because they recognize that kids coming out of mainstream programs often just hit all of the little check marks, and they want kids who can speak publicly well, who have all of these skills that PLP is providing at a young age. So I think that it actually doesn't just provide the skills, but it sets them apart when they do their applications.
Yeah, I thank you for that. It's a fantastic comment, and I would just like echo that's really why we really emphasize the publicness of their work and the curation of that portfolio, because not only can they say that they can do those things, but they actually have like the receipts to like point to and show the evolution of those skills over time, and that is super strong as well.
I'll let the students turn their cameras off in just 1 second. Do you guys have any last thoughts? Does anybody have any burning things? I saw Amy did a great job of adding in there just about being confident about sharing your work and how you learned about the publicness of your work. Do any of you want to say anything on that topic or anything else at all before I let you turn your camera off?
I just kind of want to say that PLP is really good at just pushing you out of your comfort zone. I'm an extremely introverted person, but I remember in grade 10, we had to do this podcasting project. And we had to make like 10 different episodes, and for each one we had to go out and interview someone different for it. And just doing that has just made me it's kind of things like that that just get you ready to just be able later in life just to be able to say, yeah, I don't really want to do this, but I will still do this because I'm confident in myself that I can just at least try it out, you know? So yeah, I think PLP is just really good at that.
Thank you, you guys. Ms. Maxwell put in the chat that you can find Society's Walls on Grace's blog. That was the name of her podcast. Now she's wishing she'd never mentioned it.
I'm sure you can search for it in iTunes or wherever your podcast directory of choice, and you will still find those episodes too.
Spotify, Apple, anywhere. It's out there.
All right, you guys, thank you so much to our PLP learners. Yes, you can disappear. Mr. Hughes, just a couple of last words, maybe just about applications. A couple of students asking, hey, what happens if I don't get in? What happens if this? So do you want to do the reassurance here?
Yeah, sure. So like if you did not hear me before, or if you just did not believe me, you need to watch the recording. The application process is not about putting everybody into a box and then ranking everybody. So it is not, you should not really be thinking about it that way. What you should be thinking about is like, what have you heard tonight about learning? And the application that you're submitting due on Monday is just the first part of what that looks like. So we're really looking forward and excited to meet you in person, and we'll see you at the group interview as well. And it's about the whole process. So don't get too anxious, don't get too hung up, or don't worry about that. We're a long way from having to worry about that. There's quite a few questions about like, oh, are you really sure you have my email? How will you be able to contact me? Don't worry. If you have submitted things to Shobi, then we have your contact information, and if we need to, we'll be getting in touch with anything that either is missing, or if there's a problem with any of the components that you've uploaded. We have that month between basically now and then to sort those things out. That goes for your teacher references as well. So as of today, we have not contacted any of your teachers yet. We are waiting to the application to close, and then we will be contacting your teachers, your grade 7 teachers, or whoever your teacher reference is, all at once. So you don't need to pester them or bother them. Just trust that
Please do not. Please, please leave your poor
have
teachers
given
alone.
us that contact name, then you have done your job. It is over to us now. If you do have any other questions, and I already see some people are emailing me during this meeting, which is totally fine, just send an email to plp@ccope.ca. Just be prepared that we are quite busy right now with a few other things, so you might not hear from me instantly. So don't worry if it's a few days. We're going to take a look at all of your applications starting next week. Some of the other individual questions, I saw a few questions I'll just briefly touch on about like the academic program, or like what kind of diploma or credits students get, and are PLP 12 students ready to go to university, and can they pass exams? The curriculum, the actual courses is the same. So it is the same BC Ministry of Education provincial curriculum. The courses on the transcript that you get are coded the same. What really sets our students apart is the experience they have and the skills that they have attaining those same credentials. They absolutely are prepared for writing exams. They absolutely thrive at that because they are primed and for thinking. They have a faculty for critical thinking, the ability to express themselves, to argue and defend an opinion that they are used to doing from grade 8 all the way through their high school career. So if you did not know, BC really does not have any standardized testing anymore, even at all grades. We do have some foundation skills assessments or literacy and numeracy assessments, but those are not graded or marked in the traditional way that provincial exams used to be, for example. But even historically, when we did have those in the exam periods, PLP students usually outscored or always outscored the school and provincial average. So then when we did have that benchmark, we knew that they were prepared. So we have no hesitation to say that. And the acceptance rate of our students is 100%, basically. And the last question here is interesting. So I see Nikki asking, does it help in being accepted to universities? And the answer to that is yes. In fact, UBC actually asks us for a list of applicants and if they were PLP students, because to Wendy's point before, universities are looking for ways to better understand their applicants. And UBC, amongst a lot of other universities, have brought in like a personal profile component of an application. So alongside like a transcript of grades, they ask students to basically prepare like a resume of experiences and what UBC calls the learning pathway. And programs like IB or AP courses or enhanced programs at schools such as PLP are seen as a alternate pathway that should be recognized. And so it contributes to that personal profile component of their application. So it is a changing world, and PLP really is about responding to and preparing kids for those changes. I know we did not address every single question that was in the chat, and it's really hard in this format. It's also really hard, as I'm sure we're all familiar now with these presenting, to try and talk and do that at the same time. So I realized some questions were not answered, and I'm conscious of the time. I think wasn't our goal to keep this to about a brisk hour and 15 minutes? And
yes, it was,
we have not done that. So I think we are going to bring this formal part of the meeting to an end. I'm going to stop the recording in a second. I'm going to thank everybody for their time and attention tonight and their interest in PLP. We say it a lot, but we are genuinely excited that you have an interest in finding out more about us, and for many of you, learning with us. So we do look forward to meeting you in person very soon for your individual interview. I will be sending an email to everybody soon with the details on how that will all work. So look for that. And the place to go if you want updates is our website. So visit plp.cco.ca. We'll keep you up to date there. And again, feel free to reach out at plp@cco.ca email with any questions. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording now. Good night.